Deep in the Nevada desert, behind armed guards and classified airspace, lies a facility the United States government denied for nearly 50 years. They say it hides secret aircraft. Others say it hides something far more extraordinary. This is the full story of Area 51.
83 miles northwest of Las Vegas, in the bleached and barren heart of the Nevada desert, there is a place that the United States government said did not exist for nearly half a century. It has no official name that appears on any public map. Its airspace is the most restricted in the United States. Its perimeter is patrolled by armed guards in unmarked vehicles who monitor every approach road with motion sensors, cameras, and microwave surveillance systems. Warning signs along the boundary declare that photography is prohibited, that trespassing is punishable by imprisonment and fines of up to $10,000, and that the use of deadly force is authorized. Beyond those signs, a dirt road disappears into the desert toward a dry lake bed called Groom Lake. And beyond Groom Lake, a complex of runways, hangars, dormitories, and laboratories spreads across the desert floor like a small, secret city. This is Area 51, the most famous military installation on Earth and the most persistently mysterious. The name itself is an artifact of Cold War bureaucracy. When the Atomic Energy Commission divided the Nevada test site into numbered administrative areas for nuclear weapons testing in the 1950s, the remote section around Groom Lake was designated Area 51 on their grid maps. The name was never intended to become famous. It was a filing designation, as prosaic as a zip code. But the combination of that clinical numbering system with the extraordinary secrecy surrounding the facility transformed a bureaucratic label into a cultural icon. Area 51 became shorthand for everything the government does not want you to know, a two-word symbol of hidden truth, forbidden knowledge, and the tantalizing possibility that the most powerful nation in history is concealing something so extraordinary that it has been willing to lie about the very existence of the place where it keeps it. For 47 years, from its establishment in 1955 until 2013, the official position of the United States government was that Area 51 did not exist. This was not ambiguity or evasion, it was flat denial. When journalists, researchers, or members of Congress asked about the facility, they were told there was nothing to discuss. Maps published by the United States Geological Survey showed the area as empty desert. The Federal Aviation Administration listed the airspace above Groom Lake as restricted, but offered no explanation for the restriction. The Department of Defense acknowledged the existence of the Nevada Test and Training Range, but refused to confirm that any specific facility existed within it. The base was in the language of classification, an unacknowledged special access program, a secret so deep that even its existence was classified. For 47 years, from its establishment in 1955 until 2013, the official position of the United States government was that Area 51 did not exist. This was not ambiguity or evasion, it was flat denial. When journalists, researchers, or members of Congress asked about the facility, they were told there was nothing to discuss. Maps published by the United States Geological Survey showed the area as empty desert. The Federal Aviation Administration listed the airspace above Groom Lake as restricted, but offered no explanation for the restriction. The Department of Defense acknowledged the existence of the Nevada Test and Training Range, but refused to confirm that any specific facility existed within it. The base was, in the language of classification, an unacknowledged special access program, a secret so deep that even its existence was classified.
This denial persisted despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary. Commercial satellite imagery clearly showed runways, hangars, and support buildings at Groom Lake. Soviet spy satellites had photographed the facility since the 1960s. Aviation enthusiasts tracked aircraft approaching and departing the restricted airspace. Workers at the base commuted daily on unmarked Boeing 737 aircraft, known colloquially as Janet flights, from a dedicated terminal at Las Vegas McCarran International Airport. The base employed thousands of workers, consumed enormous quantities of supplies and fuel, and generated a visible infrastructure of support that was impossible to conceal from anyone who cared to look. The government's denial of Area 51's existence was, by any reasonable standard, absurd. And that very absurdity became the conspiracy theory's most powerful argument. If the government was willing to deny something so obviously real, what else was it willing to deny? The answer, according to the most influential conspiracy theory of the late 20th century, was extraterrestrial contact. The Area 51 conspiracy theory holds that the facility is not merely a testing ground for classified aircraft, though it is certainly that, but the primary storage site for recovered alien technology, including crashed spacecraft, preserved extraterrestrial remains, and possibly living alien beings. According to this narrative, the wreckage recovered from the Roswell crash of 1947 was transported to Area 51 for study. Additional craft and materials from other recovery operations were brought there over the following decades. A secret reverse engineering program has been working for over 70 years to understand and replicate alien propulsion systems, materials science, and energy technology. The fruits of this program, believers claim, have quietly entered the human technological mainstream: fiber optics, integrated circuits, stealth materials, night vision technology, without the public ever being told where they really came from. This is, by any empirical standard, an extraordinary set of claims. It requires believing that multiple alien spacecraft have visited Earth, that several have crashed or been captured, that the wreckage has been successfully recovered and transported to a specific facility in Nevada, that teams of scientists have been studying alien technology for decades without any of them going public, that the resulting technological breakthroughs have been laundered into civilian industry through front companies and classified technology transfer programs, and that this entire operation has been maintained in total secrecy across multiple presidential administrations, congressional oversight cycles, and changes in military and intelligence leadership. The logistical and organizational challenges of maintaining such a secret would be staggering even by the standards of the Cold War national security state.
And yet, millions of people believe some version of this story. Polls consistently find that between 20 and 30% of Americans believe the government is concealing information about alien contact, and Area 51 is almost always identified as the most likely location for that concealment. The theory has spawned an entire ecosystem of books, documentaries, websites, podcasts, and tourism: the Extraterrestrial Highway, the Little Ale Inn Diner in Rachel, Nevada, and the global phenomenon of the 2019 Storm Area 51 viral event. Area 51 is not merely a conspiracy theory. It is a cultural institution, a secular pilgrimage site, and for some, a genuine article of faith. What makes the Area 51 conspiracy theory uniquely compelling and uniquely difficult to dismiss is that it is built on a foundation of documented truth. The government really did lie about the base's existence. The government really did use the base for extraordinarily advanced and genuinely secret technology. The government really did deliberately generate false explanations for UFO sightings caused by classified aircraft. These are not conspiracy theories, they are declassified historical facts, confirmed by the CIA itself in 2013. The conspiracy theorists' argument is simple. If the government lied about these things, what else is it lying about? And that argument, however frustrating it may be to skeptics, is not irrational. It is the natural and perhaps inevitable consequence of decades of deliberate official deception. To understand how a remote desert airstrip became the most famous secret in the world, we must go back to the beginning, to 1955, to the Cold War, to a time when the United States was locked in an existential struggle with the Soviet Union and was willing to do almost anything, build almost anything, and hide almost anything in pursuit of strategic advantage. The story of Area 51 is, at its core, a story about what happens when a democracy decides that some truths are too dangerous for its citizens to know. Whether those truths involve spy planes or alien spacecraft depends on who you ask and on how much you trust the people who spent 47 years telling you there was nothing there at all.
The desert around Groom Lake is not empty. It is full of questions, questions that the United States government has answered only partially, only reluctantly, and only under pressure. Every answer has raised new questions. Every declassification has revealed new redactions. Every admission has been accompanied by the careful caveat that there are things that remain classified and cannot be discussed. The story of Area 51 is the story of a conversation between a government that insists on secrecy and a public that demands transparency. A conversation that has been ongoing for 7 decades and shows no sign of resolution. What follows is the complete history of that conversation, from the first U-2 test flight to the latest congressional hearing, from the most credible witnesses to the most outlandish claims, from the documented facts to the enduring mysteries. The story of Area 51 begins not with aliens, but with the most terrestrial of concerns, the fear that the Soviet Union was building weapons that could destroy the United States, and the desperate need to know what those weapons were. In the early 1950s, American intelligence agencies faced a crisis of information. The Soviet Union had detonated its first atomic bomb in 1949, years earlier than Western intelligence had predicted. It was developing hydrogen weapons, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and a strategic bomber force that could strike the American homeland. But the Iron Curtain made conventional intelligence gathering nearly impossible. The CIA could not place agents freely inside the Soviet Union. Satellite reconnaissance did not yet exist. The United States was flying blind against its most dangerous adversary, and the consequences of that blindness could be nuclear annihilation. The solution proposed by the CIA was audacious. Build an aircraft that could fly so high that no Soviet interceptor or anti-aircraft missile could reach it,
equip it with the most advanced cameras ever developed, and send it directly over Soviet territory to photograph every military installation, missile site, and weapons factory in the country. The aircraft would fly at 70,000 feet, nearly 14 miles above the Earth, in the thin, frigid air of the upper stratosphere, where the sky turns black and the curvature of the planet becomes visible. At that altitude, it would be beyond the reach of any weapon in the Soviet arsenal. It was a plan that required an aircraft unlike anything that had ever been built, and it required a place to build and test it where no one, absolutely no one, could see what was happening.
CIA officer Richard Bissell was given responsibility for the program, which was designated Project Aquatone. Bissell turned to Lockheed's legendary Skunk Works division, led by the brilliant and iconoclastic engineer Clarence Leonard Johnson, universally known as Kelly. Johnson's Skunk Works had already produced the P-80 Shooting Star, America's first operational jet fighter, and the F-104 Starfighter, and had earned a reputation for delivering revolutionary aircraft on impossible timelines. Johnson designed the U-2 in a matter of months, a glider-like aircraft with enormous wings, a single jet engine, and a camera system that could photograph a newspaper headline from 70,000 feet. But he needed somewhere to test it, and conventional military airfields would not do. The aircraft's existence was among the most closely held secrets in the American government. In April 1955, Bissell and Johnson flew over the Nevada desert in a small plane, searching for a suitable location. They found it at Groom Lake, a dry lake bed in the remote desert approximately 83 miles northwest of Las Vegas, surrounded by mountains and already located within the restricted airspace of the Nevada test site, where the Atomic Energy Commission was conducting nuclear weapons tests. The flat, hard surface of the dry lake bed provided a natural runway. The surrounding mountains provided visual concealment from any direction. The existing nuclear test restrictions provided legal cover for the additional airspace closures that would be needed. The location was, in Johnson's assessment, perfect, remote enough to be secure, flat enough to be functional, and already restricted enough to be invisible. Construction began immediately and proceeded at a pace that reflected the urgency of the Cold War. Within months, a basic runway had been graded on the lake bed, temporary buildings and hangars had been erected, and the first U-2 airframes were being trucked in from Lockheed's Burbank facility under tops and armed escort. The facility was initially called Watertown, after the town in New York State where CIA Director Allen Dulles had been born. Workers also called it the Ranch, Paradise Ranch, or simply the site. The designation Area 51 came from the Atomic Energy Commission's administrative grid. The number was prosaic, but it would become the most evocative designation in military history.
The first U-2 test flight from Groom Lake occurred on August 1, 1955, and it immediately created a problem that would haunt Area 51 for decades: UFO reports. The U-2 flew at altitudes that no civilian or commercial aircraft could reach. At 70,000 feet, its polished aluminum skin caught the rays of the setting sun long after the ground below had fallen into shadow, creating a brilliant, fast-moving light in the sky that witnesses could not identify. Airline pilots, ground observers, and air traffic controllers reported seeing unexplained luminous objects moving at impossible speeds and altitudes. The reports flooded into the Air Force's Project Blue Book, the official government program for investigating UFO sightings. The CIA faced a dilemma. It could not explain the sightings truthfully without revealing the existence of the U-2 program. So it chose to lie. Project Blue Book officers were instructed to attribute U-2-generated sightings to natural phenomena, ice crystals, temperature inversions, the planet Venus, or simply unidentified weather conditions. Declassified CIA documents from 1997 reveal that the agency was fully aware that U-2 flights were responsible for a significant percentage of UFO reports in the late 1950s and early 1960s, and that it deliberately used Project Blue Book as a mechanism for providing false explanations. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a documented fact confirmed by the agency itself. The United States government knowingly and systematically lied to its citizens about what they were seeing in the sky. This documented deception is the foundation stone of every conspiracy theory about Area 51. The logic is straightforward and, within its own framework, compelling. The government has been caught lying about UFOs. It lied deliberately, systematically, and for decades. It used an official investigation program as a vehicle for disinformation. If it lied about the U-2, why should anyone believe it is telling the truth about anything else? This argument is impossible to fully refute because it is based on documented historical fact. The government did lie. The question is whether those lies concealed spy planes or something far more extraordinary. And the government's own history of deception ensures that no official denial will ever be fully believed.
By the early 1960s, the U-2 program had been partially exposed. Gary Powers was shot down over the Soviet Union in May 1960, and the existence of the aircraft became public knowledge. But Area 51 did not shut down. Instead, it expanded because the CIA and the Air Force had already begun testing the U-2 successor, an aircraft so advanced, so fast, and so alien in appearance that it would generate an entirely new wave of UFO reports and push the facility deeper into the realm of conspiracy and legend. Even as the U-2 program became public knowledge after the Powers shoot-down, Lockheed's Skunk Works was already testing its replacement at Groom Lake, and the new aircraft was so radically advanced that it made the U-2 look like a crop duster by comparison. The A-12 OXCART, developed under the CIA's Project OXCART, was designed to fly at Mach 3.2, more than 3 times the speed of sound, at altitudes exceeding 85,000 feet. At that speed, the aircraft's titanium skin reached temperatures of over 600 degrees Fahrenheit. The air friction was so intense that the aircraft expanded several inches in flight due to thermal expansion. The engineering challenges were so extreme that Lockheed had to invent new manufacturing techniques, new materials, and new fuel formulations to make the aircraft possible. When the A-12 first flew from Groom Lake in April 1962, it was arguably the most advanced machine ever built by human hands. The A-12 and its Air Force variant, the SR-71 Blackbird, generated UFO reports on a scale that dwarfed the U-2's contribution. The aircraft's speed was so great that witnesses could not track it with the naked eye. It appeared as a streak or a flash rather than a moving object.
Its altitude was beyond anything in civilian aviation experience. Its design, with twin vertical stabilizers canted inward, a flattened fuselage, and engine nacelles that glowed red-hot during high-speed flight, bore no resemblance to any conventional aircraft. When observed from below, particularly at dusk when the aircraft caught sunlight at altitude, it appeared as a glowing, fast-moving object, performing maneuvers that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Air traffic controllers, airline pilots, and ground observers reported seeing craft that moved faster than any known aircraft, changed direction impossibly, and disappeared instantaneously. All descriptions perfectly consistent with a Mach 3 reconnaissance aircraft performing routine maneuvers.
The Blackbird program remained classified until 1964, when President Lyndon Johnson publicly acknowledged the existence of the SR-71 variant in a move designed to demonstrate American technological superiority to the Soviet Union. But the full details of the A-12 and its capabilities remained classified for decades, and the aircraft's role in generating UFO reports was not officially acknowledged until the CIA released declassified documents in 1997. During the decades of secrecy, the UFO reports generated by OXCART flights were added to the growing pile of unexplained sightings attributed to Area 51, reinforcing the narrative that something extraordinary was flying in the skies above the Nevada desert. But the parade of classified aircraft at Groom Lake did not end with the Blackbird. In 1977, Lockheed began testing the Have Blue prototype, the world's first stealth aircraft, at Area 51. The Have Blue was a radical departure from conventional aircraft design. Its angular, faceted surfaces were designed to deflect radar waves rather than reflect them, making the aircraft effectively invisible to radar detection. The aircraft looked nothing like any plane that had ever existed. It resembled a geometric abstraction more than a flying machine, with sharp angles, flat surfaces, and no curved lines. When it flew, it appeared to witnesses as a dark, angular, silent object moving through the sky in ways that seemed to contradict aerodynamic principles. It was, quite literally, a flying object that could not be identified by anyone who did not hold the appropriate security clearance. The Have Blue prototype crashed twice during testing, and both airframes were lost. But the program led directly to the F-117A Nighthawk, the world's first operational stealth fighter, which began testing at Groom Lake in 1981 and achieved initial operational capability in 1983. The F-117 was used operationally in the 1989 Panama invasion and the 1991 Gulf War before being publicly acknowledged. For 8 years, this angular, bizarre-looking aircraft flew from a secret base in the Nevada desert, generating UFO reports, mystifying witnesses, and adding another layer of genuine mystery to the Area 51 legend. When the F-117 was finally revealed to the public in 1988, many UFO researchers noted with frustration that years of UFO sightings they had been told were imaginary had been caused by a real aircraft the government had been hiding. Beyond its own aircraft programs, Area 51 served as a testing ground for captured enemy technology under a series of operations with improbably colorful names. Project Have Donut involved the testing of a Soviet MiG-21 fighter obtained through a defecting Iraqi pilot. Project Have Drill tested another MiG-21 variant. Project Have Ferry involved a MiG-17. These aircraft were flown extensively at Groom Lake by American pilots who were developing tactics to counter them in potential combat scenarios. The Soviet aircraft were painted in American markings and test-flown against American fighters in simulated dogfights, a program that was deeply classified because it revealed both the sources through which the aircraft had been obtained and the specific tactical vulnerabilities that had been discovered. The cumulative effect of these programs on the Area 51 conspiracy was enormous. For decades, the skies above Groom Lake and the surrounding Nevada desert were filled with aircraft that bore no resemblance to anything in the civilian aviation world. Aircraft that flew at impossible speeds, at impossible altitudes, that appeared on no radar, that made no sound, that glowed with unearthly light, that seemed to hover or change direction instantaneously. Every one of these observations was a genuine sighting of a real object that the witness genuinely could not identify. Every one of them was officially denied, explained away, or simply ignored by the authorities. And every one of them became another data point in the growing case that something beyond conventional technology was being flown from the world's most secret airstrip. The irony is that the truth about Area 51's aircraft programs is itself extraordinary. The U-2 could photograph a newspaper headline from 14 miles up. The SR-71 could cross the continental United States in 67 minutes. The F-117 was effectively invisible to radar. These achievements represented genuine technological marvels, the product of brilliant engineering, unlimited budgets, and a willingness to push the boundaries of what was physically possible. They are, in many ways, more impressive than the conspiracy theory because they actually happened. But the very secrecy that made them possible also made them invisible to the public. And into that void of information, the conspiracy theory rushed to fill the space with something even more extraordinary. By the late 1980s, Area 51 had been the testing ground for the most advanced aircraft in human history for over 3 decades. It had generated thousands of UFO reports, all of which had been officially denied. It had been the site of programs so classified that their very existence was a state secret. It had become, in the words of aviation journalist Jim Goodall, the most productive flight test center in the world. And then, in May 1989, a man appeared on television in Las Vegas and claimed that the base's most classified secret had nothing to do with aircraft at all. On a May evening in 1989, a figure appeared in silhouette on KLAS-TV in Las Vegas, identified only as Dennis, and made claims that would permanently redefine the Area 51 narrative. The man said he was a physicist who had recently been employed at a facility he called S4, located approximately 15 miles south of the main Area 51 installation, built into the mountainside at Papoose Lake. He said he had been hired to study the propulsion system of a captured extraterrestrial spacecraft. He said there were 9 such spacecraft stored in hangar bays carved into the hillside, and he said the United States government had been in possession of this technology since at least the late 1940s. The interviewer was George Knapp, an investigative journalist with KLAS-TV who had been pursuing UFO stories in the Las Vegas area and had been introduced to Dennis through a mutual contact. The interview was broadcast locally but would eventually reach a global audience. Within months, the man in silhouette was identified as Robert Scott Lazar, Bob Lazar, a 30-year-old who claimed to hold master's degrees in physics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and in electronics from the California Institute of Technology. He said he had previously worked at Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico before being recruited for the S4 project through a contact at the Department of Naval Intelligence.
According to Lazar, he had been specifically hired to study and attempt to replicate the propulsion system of one of the 9 recovered alien spacecraft, the one he designated the Sport Model, a small disc-shaped vehicle approximately 40 feet in diameter, with a smooth, seamless exterior and no visible seams, rivets, or joints.
Lazar's description of the Sport Model's propulsion system was detailed and specific. He claimed the craft was powered by element 115, an element that did not yet exist on the periodic table at the time of his claims. When element 115 was bombarded with protons in a small particle accelerator aboard the craft, Lazar said, it underwent a nuclear reaction that produced antimatter. The annihilation of matter and antimatter released enormous energy, which was channeled into what Lazar called a gravity amplifier, a device that could generate and focus gravitational waves, creating a field of distorted space-time around the craft. By manipulating this field, the craft could effectively bend space and travel vast distances without experiencing inertia or the constraints of conventional propulsion. It was, Lazar claimed, a technology that operated on principles of physics that human science had not yet discovered. The craft had 2 modes of operation, according to Lazar. In what he called Omicron mode, the gravity amplifiers were configured for short-range travel, lifting the craft and allowing it to hover and maneuver close to the ground. In Delta mode, the amplifiers were reconfigured to distort space-time over larger scales, allowing the craft to travel interstellar distances by effectively pulling its destination toward itself rather than traveling through the intervening space. Lazar described watching test flights of the Sport Model from a distance at Papoose Lake, where the craft rose silently from the desert floor, hovered, and performed maneuvers that would be impossible for end aircraft based on conventional aerodynamics: abrupt right-angled turns, instantaneous acceleration, and complete silence. Lazar also claimed to have been given access to briefing documents that described the origin of the craft and the history of human contact with their builders. According to these documents, the beings who built the craft originated from the Zeta Reticuli star system, a binary star system approximately 39 light-years from Earth. The documents described a history of contact between these beings and the United States government, including agreements that had been negotiated regarding the aliens' activities on Earth. Lazar was careful to note that he could not verify the accuracy of the briefing documents. They might have been disinformation designed to test his loyalty or to provide a false narrative for compartmentalized workers. But they described their contents in detail, and those descriptions became a cornerstone of the Area 51 conspiracy narrative.
The impact of Lazar's claims was immediate and seismic. Nothing in the history of UFO conspiracy theory had been this specific, this detailed, or this testable. Previous UFO witnesses had described lights in the sky, fleeting encounters, and vague impressions. Lazar described specific technology, specific physics, specific locations, and specific institutional structures. He identified a facility, S4 at Papoose Lake, that could theoretically be verified or disproven. He described an element, 115, that could theoretically be synthesized and tested. He named organizations and processes that could theoretically be investigated. The specificity of his claims gave them a weight and a credibility that vague stories about lights in the sky could never achieve. George Knapp pursued the story with the tenacity of a genuine investigative journalist. He attempted to verify Lazar's educational and employment claims. He contacted MIT, Caltech, and Los Alamos National Laboratory. He filed Freedom of Information Act requests. He interviewed dozens of people who knew Lazar or had worked in the areas he described. What he found was simultaneously tantalizing and frustrating. Enough confirmation to keep the story alive, but not enough to prove it definitively.
A phone directory listing confirmed that a Robert Lazar had indeed worked at Los Alamos, contradicting the laboratory's initial denial. But MIT and Caltech had no record of his enrollment. His claimed degrees could not be verified. The trail led everywhere and nowhere at once. Lazar's personal life also became an issue. In the months following his public identification, it was revealed that he had been involved in a prostitution-related business, that his personal financial history was checkered, and that some of his biographical claims did not hold up to scrutiny. Skeptics argued that his entire story was a fabrication designed to achieve fame and profit. Supporters argued that the government had systematically erased his records to discredit him, precisely the response that would be expected if his story were true. The debate became circular, with each side interpreting the same ambiguous evidence as confirmation of its position.
What is beyond dispute is that Bob Lazar permanently changed the Area 51 conversation. Before Lazar, Area 51 was one of many rumored government secrets. After Lazar, it was the government secret, the specific location where the most extraordinary technology in human history was allegedly being studied. His story provided a narrative that was detailed enough to engage seriously, specific enough to investigate, and ambiguous enough to resist definitive resolution. 35 years after his first television appearance, Lazar's claims remain the single most discussed, most analyzed, and most debated allegation in the history of UFO research. Lazar himself has maintained his story with remarkable consistency over 3.5 decades. In his 2019 documentary with Jeremy Corbell, he repeated the same claims he made in 1989, the same descriptions of the craft, the same account of Element 115, the same narrative of government secrecy and personal retaliation. He has never significantly altered, expanded, or retracted his claims. Whether this consistency reflects truth or simply a well-maintained fiction is the central question that his story poses, a question that, despite decades of investigation, remains stubbornly unanswered. The investigation of Bob Lazar's claims began almost immediately after his public identification and has continued for over 35 years. The results are a masterclass in ambiguity, enough discrepancies to seriously damage his credibility, but enough unexplained elements to prevent definitive dismissal. The investigation has focused on 3 primary areas: his educational background, his employment history, and the scientific plausibility of his technical claims. In each area, the evidence is more complex and more frustrating than either believers or skeptics would prefer.
The educational credentials were the first casualty. Lazar claimed to hold a master's degree in physics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a master's degree in electronic technology from the California Institute of Technology. Neither institution has any record of Robert Lazar ever enrolling, attending classes, or receiving a degree. MIT's registrar conducted a thorough search and found nothing. Caltech's records are similarly empty. No professors at either institution have come forward to confirm Lazar as a student. No classmates have been identified. No thesis or dissertation exists in either university's library. Lazar has offered several explanations for this absence: that the government erased his records as part of a systematic effort to discredit him, that his enrollment was through classified programs that maintained separate records, and that the institutions themselves may be participating in the cover-up. None of these explanations can be independently verified. The Los Alamos employment claim proved more complex. The laboratory initially denied that anyone named Robert Lazar had ever worked there. This categorical denial was embarrassed when investigative journalist George Knapp obtained a Los Alamos National Laboratory phone directory from the mid-1980s that listed Robert Lazar with an internal phone number.
Confronted with this evidence, the laboratory acknowledged that Lazar had been employed there, but as a technician contracted through Kirk-Meyer, a staffing company, not as a physicist with advanced degrees conducting high-level research. The distinction is significant. Working as a contracted technician at Los Alamos is very different from working as a credentialed physicist, and the two roles would involve radically different levels of access to sensitive information. Lazar's supporters argue that his technical role was itself a cover story. His critics argue that his actual role matches his actual qualifications. The scientific credibility of Lazar's claims took a significant turn in 2003 when a team of Russian scientists at the Joint Institute for Nuclear Research in Dubna successfully synthesized element 115, later named moscovium. Lazar had described element 115 in 1989 when the element existed only as a theoretical possibility. Its actual synthesis was seized upon by supporters as powerful vindication. How could Lazar have known about an element that had not yet been created unless he had access to extraterrestrial materials containing it? But the vindication proved hollow upon closer examination. The synthesized moscovium is wildly unstable, decaying in fractions of a second. It cannot serve as a stable fuel source, as Lazar described. Its nuclear properties do not match Lazar's descriptions of gravity wave generation, and the existence of super-heavy elements beyond those synthesized had been predicted by nuclear physicists since the 1960s. Lazar did not need alien technology to know that element 115 was theoretically possible.
Lazar's description of gravity wave manipulation raised additional scientific red flags. He described gravity as a wave that could be generated, amplified, and focused by mechanical means, a description that bears little resemblance to gravity as understood by modern physics. While gravitational waves were confirmed by the LIGO experiment in 2015, they are distortions in space-time generated by massive accelerating objects, not something that can be produced by a tabletop device in a flying saucer. Lazar's description of anti-gravity propulsion through space-time sounds superficially like concepts from general relativity, but physicists who have examined his claims in detail have found them to be a popular science-level misunderstanding of the actual physics, rather than a sophisticated technical description. This does not prove he was lying. It could indicate that he was describing technology he did not fully understand, but it undermines the image of a trained physicist with advanced degrees. The absence of any corroborating documentation is perhaps the most damaging element of Lazar's case. In over 3 decades, Lazar has never produced a single physical artifact from his claimed employment at S4. No pay stubs, no tax records, no security badges, no internal documents, no photographs, no samples of materials. He has never identified another S4 employee who could corroborate his account. He has never provided the name of a supervisor, a project manager, or a fellow scientist. He attributes this complete absence of evidence to systematic government suppression. His records were erased, his colleagues were silenced, and any physical evidence was confiscated. This explanation is consistent with a genuine cover-up. It is also consistent with a fabrication, and there is no way to distinguish between the two. In 1990, Lazar pleaded guilty to pandering charges related to his involvement in a prostitution-related business in Las Vegas. Critics have used this conviction to question his character and credibility. Supporters argue that the charges were fabricated or encouraged by the government as part of a campaign to discredit him, a tactic consistent with documented government behavior toward other whistleblowers and dissidents. The truth of this claim is unknowable, but the conviction did provide skeptics with ammunition and complicated Lazar's public image.
Jeremy Corbell's 2019 documentary, Bob Lazar, Area 51 and Flying Saucers, presented Lazar's case to a new generation. The film included footage of an FBI raid on Lazar's business, United Nuclear Scientific Equipment, which Lazar claimed was related to the government's ongoing interest in his activities. The FBI stated the raid was related to potential violations of regulations regarding toxic materials. The ambiguity was, once again, perfect. The raid was either evidence of continued government surveillance of a whistleblower or a routine regulatory enforcement action, depending on one's prior assumptions. After 35 years of investigation, Bob Lazar remains what he has always been, an enigma. His educational credentials cannot be verified. His employment claim is partially confirmed, but in a far more modest capacity than he asserts. His scientific descriptions are specific but do not align with established physics. He has no corroborating evidence. He has maintained his story with remarkable consistency, and the institution he accuses of covering up his claims, the United States government, has a documented history of doing exactly the kinds of things he describes. The case of Bob Lazar is ultimately a mirror. What you see in it depends entirely on what you bring to it. Bob Lazar is the most famous Area 51 whistleblower, but he is far from the only one. Over the decades, a steady stream of individuals has come forward claiming direct knowledge of extraordinary activities at the base and its surrounding facilities. Their accounts vary widely in specificity, credibility, and internal consistency, but collectively they have created a body of testimony that, whatever its ultimate accuracy, represents one of the most sustained whistleblower narratives in the history of government secrecy. Evaluating these witnesses requires the same rigorous approach applied to Lazar, examining what can be verified, identifying what cannot, and acknowledging the irreducible ambiguity that surrounds claims about activities that, by definition, are classified at the highest levels of government secrecy.
Edgar Fouche claimed to be a former aerospace engineer who worked on classified programs at Area 51 and other installations. His most notable claim involved a classified aircraft he called the TR-3B Astra, a triangular craft allegedly powered by a rotating mercury plasma ring that generated a magnetic vortex field, reducing the craft's effective mass by up to 89%. According to Fouche, the TR-3B was operational in the early 1990s and was responsible for many of the triangular UFO sightings reported across the United States and Belgium during that period. Fouche's claims have never been verified, and his employment history in the specific roles he described has not been independently confirmed. However, the persistence of triangular UFO sightings, including the famous Belgium UFO wave of 1989 to 1990, has kept his claims alive in conspiracy literature. Bill Ewhurst was a retired mechanical engineer who claimed to have worked at Area 51 on flight simulators designed to train human pilots to fly recovered alien spacecraft. Ewhurst described working alongside an alien being he referred to as J-Rod, who allegedly served as a technical consultant for the reverse engineering program. His account was detailed and delivered with the matter-of-fact demeanor of a veteran engineer describing a routine project. Ewhurst died in 2009 without his claims being verified, and no corroborating witnesses from his described projects have come forward. His testimony remains one of the more remarkable and unverifiable accounts in the Area 51 archive.
Dan Burrish was a microbiologist who claimed to have worked at S4 studying tissue samples from an alien being housed at the facility. Burrish described a complex narrative involving multiple alien species, time travel, and a looking glass device that could view possible futures. His claims were extraordinarily elaborate and extended far beyond anything described by other witnesses, leading many researchers, including some sympathetic to the broader Area 51 conspiracy theory, to question whether his account was genuine testimony, elaborate fiction, or deliberate disinformation designed to discredit the wider UFO research community by association.
The pattern across these testimonies is instructive. Each witness provides some details that align with other accounts and some that contradict them. Each claims a level of access and expertise that cannot be independently verified. Each describes security procedures and organizational structures that are plausible for a classified military facility, but that could also be constructed from publicly available information about how such facilities operate. And each attributes the absence of corroborating evidence to the effectiveness of government suppression. This pattern does not prove the witnesses are lying, but it does create a body of testimony that is structured in a way that makes verification essentially impossible. The most significant development in recent years has been the emergence of testimony from within the official government establishment itself. In June 2023, David Grush, a former intelligence officer who served as the co-lead for the Department of Defense's UAP task force, testified before Congress that the United States government was in possession of intact and partially intact vehicles of non-human origin. Grush stated under oath that he had been told about crash retrieval programs by multiple individuals with direct knowledge, and that he had filed formal complaints through proper channels about what he described as illegal concealment of these programs from congressional oversight. Grush's testimony was categorically different from previous Area 51 whistleblowers for several reasons. He was a credentialed intelligence officer with verified employment in relevant programs. He testified under oath before Congress with legal penalties for perjury. His claims were not about his personal experiences at a specific facility, but about the existence of programs he had learned about through official channels, and he was supported by the Inspector General of the intelligence community, who found his complaint credible and urgent. None of this proves his claims are true. He described what he was told, not what he personally witnessed. But it represented the most authoritative statement yet made about the possible existence of recovered non-human technology within the U.S. government.
The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, established by the Department of Defense in 2022 to investigate UAP, has conducted its own investigation into claims of crash retrieval programs. Its initial reports have been carefully ambiguous, neither confirming nor categorically denying the existence of such programs. This measured ambiguity has been interpreted differently by different audiences. Skeptics see it as evidence that no extraordinary evidence exists, while believers see it as evidence that the government is still managing the disclosure of information it has concealed for decades. The cumulative effect of decades of witness testimony, from Lazar to Fouché to Eyehouse to Grush, is a body of claims that cannot be collectively verified, but also cannot be collectively dismissed. Each individual account has weaknesses, but the pattern of claims, extending across decades and emerging from individuals with varying backgrounds and motivations, creates a narrative momentum that official denials have been unable to halt. Whether that momentum reflects a genuine truth gradually emerging from behind the wall of classification, or a self-reinforcing mythology that generates its own evidence, is the question that defines the current state of the Area 51 debate. Area 51 achieved something that no other military installation in history has managed. It became a tourist destination, a cultural brand, and an internet meme, while remaining an active classified facility surrounded by armed guards and restricted airspace. The transformation of a secret base into a global cultural phenomenon is one of the stranger chapters in the history of American popular culture, a story about how secrecy, conspiracy, and entertainment became so thoroughly entangled that they can no longer be separated. The base's nicknames tell the story of this transformation. To the military, it was Groom Lake, or the Nevada test site. To insiders, it was the Ranch, or Watertown. To conspiracy culture, it became Dreamland, a name that captures both the dreamlike quality of the claims made about it and the very real dreams of knowledge and wonder that draw people to the Nevada desert.
Nevada State Route 375, the lonely highway that passes closest to the base's restricted boundary, was officially designated the Extraterrestrial Highway by the state of Nevada in 1996, a recognition of the road's status as a pilgrimage route for UFO enthusiasts from around the world. The designation was both a tourism promotion initiative and an acknowledgement of a cultural reality. Thousands of visitors were already making the drive each year, and the state saw no reason not to capitalize on it. The highway stretches through some of the most desolate landscape in North America, miles of sagebrush, distant mountains, and an overwhelming sky that on clear nights displays the Milky Way with a brilliance that city-dwelling visitors have often never experienced. The town of Rachel, Nevada, with a population that fluctuates around 50 residents, exists largely as an outpost for Area 51 tourists. Its primary business is the Little Aileen, a deliberate pun on Little Alien, a combination bar, restaurant, and gift shop that has become one of the most photographed roadside attractions in the American West. The diner serves burgers named after UFO incidents, sells alien-themed merchandise, and displays walls of photographs left by visitors from every continent. It is simultaneously a genuine community gathering place for Rachel's tiny population and a commercial shrine to the conspiracy theory that put their town on the map. The relationship between the residents and the conspiracy is pragmatic. Whatever they personally believe about aliens at Groom Lake, the conspiracy pays the bills. Film and television transformed Area 51 from a conspiracy theory into a mainstream cultural reference. The 1996 blockbuster Independence Day depicted the facility as the secret storage site of an alien spacecraft captured in the 1950s, a direct dramatization of the core conspiracy theory. The film's massive commercial success introduced the Area 51 narrative to audiences who had never heard of Bob Lazar, Groom Lake, or Element 115. Will Smith punching an alien in a hangar became one of the most iconic images in science fiction cinema, and it fixed Area 51 in the public consciousness as the place where the government keeps the aliens. The X-Files, which ran from 1993 to 2002 and was revived in 2016, incorporated Area 51 into its mythology of government alien cover-ups. Men in Black, Paul, Transformers, and dozens of other films and television series used the facility as a setting, a reference point, or a punchline.
The internet age accelerated Area 51's cultural penetration exponentially. YouTube conspiracy channels dedicated to the facility attracted millions of views. Reddit forums dissected every piece of evidence and testimony. Google Earth allowed anyone with a computer to examine satellite imagery of the base in detail, searching for new construction, unusual vehicles, or signs of extraordinary activity. The democratization of information technology meant that Area 51 was no longer a secret discussed in specialized publications. It was a constantly evolving, globally accessible conversation conducted in real time by millions of participants. The cultural explosion reached its absurd and glorious peak in June 2019, when a 20-year-old college student named Maddie Roberts created a Facebook event titled "Storm Area 51, They Can't Stop All of Us." The event's description proposed that participants gather in Rachel, Nevada on September 20th, 2019 and rush the base's perimeter using Naruto-style running, a reference to the Japanese anime character who runs with his arms trailing behind him. The event was created as a joke. The internet did not treat it as one. Within weeks, over 2 million people had clicked "Going," and an additional 1.5 million had clicked "Interested." The event became a global news story. The United States Air Force issued formal warnings that Area 51 was an active military facility and that any attempt to enter would be met with force. The Storm Area 51 phenomenon revealed something important about the relationship between conspiracy culture and internet humor in the 21st century. Most of the 2 million people who signed up had no intention of actually storming a military base. The event was performative, a collective joke, a shared cultural moment, a way of expressing fascination with Area 51 through the grammar of internet irony. But beneath the irony lay genuine curiosity, genuine distrust of government secrecy, and a genuine desire to know what was really behind those restricted area signs. The meme was a joke wrapped around a real question, and the question was the same one that had been asked since 1989. What is the government hiding at Groom Lake? On September 20, 2019, between 1,500 and 3,000 people actually traveled to the Nevada desert for the event, which had been rebranded as Alien Stock, a festival featuring music, speakers, and alien-themed entertainment in Rachel and the nearby town of Hyco. The atmosphere was festive rather than confrontational. About 150 people approached the base's perimeter gate and posed for photographs with the warning signs. 5 people were briefly detained after crossing the boundary line. No one attempted an actual incursion. The event generated enormous media coverage, significant revenue for the local communities, and a global conversation about why a joke about storming a military base had resonated so deeply with so many people across so many cultures. The merchandising of Area 51 has become an industry in itself. The base's mystique has been applied to everything from T-shirts and coffee mugs to video games and energy drinks. Las Vegas, 83 miles to the southeast, features alien-themed attractions, escape rooms, and gift shops that trade on the Area 51 brand. The irony is thick. A facility established to maintain absolute secrecy has become one of the most commercially exploited brands in the American entertainment landscape. The guards still patrol the perimeter. The airspace is still restricted. The cameras and motion sensors still watch every approach road. But beyond the boundary, the secret has become a product, consumed, shared, and enjoyed by millions who may never know whether it conceals spy planes, alien spacecraft, or simply the enduring human hunger for mystery. The cultural life of Area 51 has also created a feedback loop that complicates any attempt at serious analysis. When filmmakers use Area 51 as a setting for alien encounters, they reinforce the conspiracy narrative. When tourists visit the extraterrestrial highway, they validate the cultural significance of the theory.
When the government issues warnings about approaching the base, those warnings are interpreted as further evidence of concealment. The conspiracy theory and the culture it has generated are now so deeply intertwined that separating them may be impossible. Each sustains the other, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of mystery, entertainment, and genuine inquiry that shows no sign of ending.
On June 25, 2013, the Central Intelligence Agency released a 400-page document that, for the first time in the facility's 58-year history, officially acknowledged the existence of Area 51. The document was released in response to a Freedom of Information Act request filed in 2005 by Jeffrey Richelson of the National Security Archive at George Washington University. Its title was innocuous: The Central Intelligence Agency and Overhead Reconnaissance, the U-2 and OXCART Programs, 1954 to 1974. But its contents represented a seismic shift in the government's posture toward the facility. After nearly half a century of flat denial, the United States government was finally admitting that there was, in fact, something at Groom Lake. The document confirmed the basic facts that aviation researchers had long established through independent investigation. Area 51 was located at Groom Lake, Nevada. It had been established in 1955 as a testing facility for the U-2 spy plane. It had subsequently been used for the A-12 OXCART program, the precursor to the SR-71 Blackbird. The document included maps, photographs, and organizational charts that identified the facility by name and location. It described security procedures, testing schedules, and technical specifications of the aircraft programs conducted there. It was, by the standards of intelligence declassification, remarkably detailed and forthcoming about the facility's terrestrial activities. What the document did not contain was equally significant. There was no mention of recovered alien technology, extraterrestrial craft, reverse engineering programs, or any activity beyond conventional, if extraordinarily advanced, aircraft testing. The document's silence on these subjects was interpreted differently by different audiences. For skeptics, it confirmed what they had always argued: Area 51 was a remarkable but entirely terrestrial facility devoted to pushing the boundaries of human aviation technology. For conspiracy theorists, it was a limited hangout, a deliberate strategy of revealing some truth to distract from the larger truth that remained concealed. The document admitted what could no longer be denied, while protecting what was truly sensitive.
The concept of a limited hangout is central to understanding how conspiracy theorists interpret government disclosures about Area 51. The term originated in intelligence community jargon to describe a strategy in which an intelligence agency, faced with exposure, voluntarily reveals some true information to create the impression of transparency while concealing its most damaging secrets. Conspiracy theorists argue that every government disclosure about Area 51, from the 2013 CIA acknowledgement to subsequent declassifications, follows this pattern: reveal the spy planes to conceal the alien technology. The argument is unfalsifiable by design because any amount of disclosed information can always be framed as a fraction of the total, and the unrevealed remainder can always be assumed to contain the most extraordinary material. The 2017 revelations about the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program added new dimensions to the Area 51 conversation. The New York Times reported that the Department of Defense had operated a classified program from 2007 to 2012, funded with $22 million at the initiative of Senator Harry Reid of Nevada, that investigated reports of unidentified aerial phenomena encountered by military personnel. The program was directed by Luis Elizondo, a career intelligence officer who resigned from the Pentagon in 2017 and became a public advocate for UAP disclosure. The program's existence confirmed that the government was taking UAP seriously at an institutional level, a significant departure from decades of official dismissal. The 2021 release of the preliminary UAP assessment by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence further shifted the terrain. The report examined 144 UAP encounters reported by military personnel between 2004 and 2021. Of those, it was able to explain only one with high confidence, a deflating balloon. The remaining 143 were categorized as unexplained. The report did not attribute any of the encounters to extraterrestrial technology, but it also explicitly stated that it could not rule out that explanation. The careful, hedged language of the report was itself significant. The government was no longer dismissing UAP as misidentifications or hoaxes, but was acknowledging them as a genuine and unexplained phenomenon.
Congressional hearings on UAP in 2022 and 2023 brought the conversation to its highest official level. Members of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees questioned Pentagon officials, military pilots, and intelligence officers about UAP encounters, government secrecy, and the possible concealment of recovered non-human technology. The hearings produced dramatic moments, including David Grush's sworn testimony about crash retrieval programs, but no definitive answers. Officials acknowledged that UAP represented a genuine national security concern, but provided no conclusive evidence about their origin or nature. The establishment of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office in 2022 represented the government's most significant institutional response to the UAP issue. AARO was tasked with coordinating the investigation of UAP reports across all branches of the military and intelligence community, and with reporting its findings to Congress. Its initial reports acknowledged receiving hundreds of UAP reports from military personnel, some involving objects exhibiting capabilities beyond known technology. But AARO's leadership also stated that it had found no verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial technology or crash retrieval programs, a statement that Grush and his supporters challenged as either uninformed or deliberately misleading. The net effect of the government's disclosure since 2013 has been to narrow the gap between the official narrative and the conspiracy theory without closing it entirely. The government now admits Area 51 exists. It admits it was used for secret aircraft that generated UFO reports. It admits it has investigated UAP. It admits that some UAP remain unexplained. It has not admitted possession of non-human technology. Whether this sequence represents the gradual emergence of truth or a managed strategy of controlled disclosure, revealing enough to maintain credibility while concealing the most extraordinary secrets, is the question that divides researchers and may never be definitively answered.
Area 51 is still there. The runways are still operational. New hangars have been built in recent years, visible on commercial satellite imagery. Large, modern structures that suggest significant ongoing programs.
Aircraft of unknown type have been photographed approaching and departing the base. The Janet flights still operate daily from Las Vegas, carrying workers to a facility that the government acknowledged 11 years ago, but still refuses to discuss in any meaningful detail. Whatever Area 51 was built to do, it is still doing it. The question is what that something is. The skeptical answer is straightforward and well supported by available evidence. Area 51 remains what it has always been, a flight test center for classified aircraft and weapons systems. The next generation of stealth technology, hypersonic vehicles, advanced drones, and electronic warfare systems are being developed and tested in the Nevada desert, just as the U-2, the SR-71, and the F-117 were tested before them. The extreme secrecy is justified by the extreme sensitivity of these programs. Technologies that represent billions of dollars of investment and provide critical strategic advantages over potential adversaries. There is no need to invoke extraterrestrial explanations for activities that are fully explicable as the continuation of 7 decades of classified aviation research. The conspiracy theorists' answer is equally straightforward, if far more extraordinary. Area 51 is the custodian of recovered non-human technology that represents the most significant discovery in human history. The base's continued secrecy is not about protecting aircraft programs, but about managing the implications of extraterrestrial contact. Implications so profound, so destabilizing, and so fundamentally paradigm-shifting that the government has concluded they cannot be safely revealed to the public. The spy planes are real, but they are the cover story, not the secret. The real secret is in the deeper hangars, the underground facilities, the compartmentalized programs that no congressional oversight committee has been allowed to examine.
Between these two positions lies an enormous and perhaps unbridgeable epistemological gap. The skeptical position is supported by documented evidence and by the principle of parsimony, the scientific preference for the simplest explanation that fits the facts. The conspiracy position is supported by the government's documented history of deception, by the testimony of whistleblowers whose claims cannot be definitively disproven, and by the legitimate observation that the government's pattern of secrecy, denial, partial admission, and continued concealment is exactly what would be expected if something extraordinary were being hidden. Neither side can prove its case conclusively, and this irresolution is unlikely to change unless the government releases definitive evidence in one direction or the other. The psychology of the Area 51 mystery reveals something important about the relationship between secrecy and trust in a democracy. The government's 47-year denial of the base's existence was not just a security measure. It was a betrayal of the democratic principle that the government should not systematically lie to its citizens. When the denial was finally lifted, it did not restore trust. Instead, it confirmed what conspiracy theorists had always argued. The government lies, and it lies about things that matter. The damage done by decades of official deception cannot be repaired by a single declassification, because the precedent of deception ensures that every future disclosure will be received with suspicion. Area 51 is, among other things, a case study in the long-term consequences of institutional dishonesty. There is also a dimension of the Area 51 mystery that transcends politics and epistemology and enters the realm of something closer to spirituality. For many people who are drawn to the Area 51 narrative, the question of whether aliens have visited Earth is not primarily a scientific question, it is an existential one. It is the question of whether we are alone in the universe, whether our civilization is the only intelligence in the cosmos, and whether the vast and overwhelming emptiness of space is truly empty. The longing to know that we are not alone, that somewhere, somehow, contact has been made, is one of the most powerful and most human of all desires. Area 51, with its promise of hidden knowledge and forbidden truth, speaks to that longing in a way that no scientific paper or government report ever could.
The Nevada desert itself contributes to the mystique. There is something about the landscape, the enormous sky, the geological silence, the sense of standing at the edge of the known world that invites contemplation of the unknown. The desert has always been a place where prophets go to receive visions, where the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary grows thin. The test pilots who flew the U-2 and the Blackbird described the experience of seeing the curvature of the Earth from the edge of space as profoundly spiritual. The conspiracy theorists who scan the night sky above Groom Lake for unexplained lights are engaged in a different kind of observation, but the underlying impulse is the same, the desire to see beyond the limits of the known. Recent satellite imagery shows continued expansion at Groom Lake. New buildings, new runway extensions, and new construction projects are visible to anyone with an internet connection and access to Google Earth. The facility is not shrinking or winding down, it is growing. Whatever programs are being conducted there, they appear to be expanding rather than contracting. This ongoing activity ensures that the Area 51 mystery will not be resolved by obsolescence. As long as the base operates, as long as the airspace remains restricted, as long as the guards patrol the perimeter and the Janet flights carry workers from Las Vegas, the questions will continue. What are they building? What are they testing? And what are they hiding? The desert keeps its secrets. It has kept them for 7 decades, and it shows no sign of releasing them. The warning signs still stand at the boundary. The cameras still watch. The dry lake bed of Groom Lake still stretches flat and white under the Nevada sun, its surface scarred with the tire marks of aircraft that most of the world will never see. Somewhere beyond those signs, beyond those cameras, beyond the armed patrols and the restricted airspace, the work continues. What that work is, whether it involves the next generation of human aviation technology or something far more extraordinary, remains, as it has been since 1955, a question that the United States government has answered with silence. And silence in the desert is the loudest sound of all.